Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No, 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 no.
Hello, boys! I'm back!
What's up YouTube, it's YUGIOH here. It has been a long time since my last video, but yes, I am still alive. I decided to take a step back from content and the game itself this past spring, just to focus on school and some other real life boring stuff that you guys do want to hear about. But I am finally back and I'm finally ready to make some dope content for you guys. So, you might have already seen, but this past weekend was actually the 1800 plus player Remote Duel YCS that took place, and I decided to come back and play in it. Ever since I got into the game around last year, I never had the opportunity to make it to any of these bigger events, so once I saw that the Remote Duel YCS was announced, I decided that it would have been a lot of fun to play in it, so I ended up doing that. And I just wanted to bring you guys this video to share my experiences with the event and show you a quick deck profile of the deck that I ended up playing for the event. Unfortunately, I didn't end up making day 2 of the event. I dropped out after round 7 of Swiss on Saturday with a 4-3 record, just under what it would have taken to get to day 2. But regardless, I still had a lot of fun playing, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you guys. As for the event itself, it was pretty crazy. Like I said, I never had the opportunity to make it to any of these big events. This is my first ever large-scale Yu-Gi-Oh event. I had a lot of fun. Honestly, one of the coolest parts, this might sound a little weird to some of you out there, but one of the coolest parts of the event to me was just looking at the registration sheet, looking at the standing sheet, and seeing all these bigger names, all these YouTubers, all these prevalent players in the community that I've come to know over these years. Just see them on the same sheet as my name. That was just one of, I don't know why, that was just really, really cool to me. Again, it might sound weird to you guys, but that was really cool to me. The event itself was ran fairly well. At least I know other servers had some issues, but at least in my server for the weekend, we didn't have too many delays. All the judges that I interacted with over the weekend were super helpful and super nice, no issues there. And like all the IRL YCSs, they did have the side events set up, so if you ended up dropping out of the main event, you have those to play, which I ended up playing in one of the speed duel side events, another thing that I've been getting into recently. I ended up actually taking second in one of those, so that was actually really, really cool too. I think Konami having these remote YCSs to gear up some of the hype for the return of IRL events, whenever that is, was a really, really good move on that part, and I do think that they did a really, really good job with that overall this weekend. Honestly, just playing in this event alone has made me want to travel to the next IRL YCS whenever that is. So yeah, I think they did a really, really good job. But yeah, I mean, I guess now I'll get into the deck that I played this weekend, and
if you haven't already figured it out, I went with Salamangreat.
That's right. I played Salamangreat this weekend. Let's go. Salamangreat, one of the more hyped decks of this format, obviously with the recent ban list, bringing back Mirage Stalio. A lot of the fans of this deck from the 2019 format decided to flock back and play this deck. I was never playing in the 2019 format, but I knew Salamangreat was a deck, and I decided to try it out. And the weeks leading up to the YCS, I've been having an absolute ton of fun playing this deck. So I decided to end up taking it to the event. The deck itself this weekend, I thought performed very, very well. Obviously, the 4-3 record showing that I ended up with doesn't show how good the deck is. I think the majority of my losses this weekend were really up to my individual play. I didn't really play the best. You know, I've been out of the game for a few months now. I did have to shake the rust off a little bit. But overall, the deck itself, I think, performed very, very well this weekend. And I do think that this deck is really, really strong. So let's go right into the card-by-card profile here. So we're just going to start off with the salad package. We have our 1 Gazelle, our 3 Spinny, 2 Foxy, 2 Jaguar, and 1 Falco. Pretty standard salad package, I think, for salad decks in this current format. You just have the 9 names. All of these names are super important and super, super good to get in rotation. You might notice we're not playing any of the other level 3 extenders that some other builds are playing. No backup secretary, no C archiver, nothing like that. No parallel exceed either. The reason for that is this build of the deck I catered to be a lot slower, a lot grindier. We're heavier on the traps than other builds that are playing. So all those extra combo pieces, I decided to not end up playing to save my space. But I honestly didn't really find myself missing them throughout this weekend. I just think these 9 names, being able to get all these names in rotation, is of utmost importance in this deck with how it functions. And next up, obviously, we have the 1 copy of Sanctuary, the main mechanic of this deck with the relinking, pretty standard in builds. Next up, we have our starter cards. We have our 1 Lady Debug and our 3 copies of Flame Buffalo. Buffalo, bar none, probably one of the co-MVPs of the deck this weekend. This card is just really, really good. Just being able to draw into your other salad names, ditching a salad name in hand like a Jack Jaguar, getting into the grave to get it into that rotation, as well as just being so good at digging for hand traps, especially post-side game 2 and 3 when you're siding in all your going second cards or all your hand traps, all your board breakers. Being able to have something like Buffalo to be able to dig for those is just really, really good. Debug, on the other hand, honestly, I thought this card was very, very lackluster this weekend. It's very, very susceptible to hand traps. In addition to the normal Ash that stops all your other searchers, this card dies to probably 5 or 6 other hand traps in the format, and it's just really, while it's still a good card being able to search out your Gazelle or any of your other pieces, I feel like there's a lot better normal summons in this deck than Debug. Still a good card, but I do think that going forward I might test actually cutting this card, just because I did think it was very lackluster during this weekend. Next up, we have our other searchers, our spell searchers. We have 1 Circle and the 3 Signet Mining. Obviously very standard in salad builds. This deck has 1.5 billion ways to get the Gazelle, just being able to search and draw and search and draw, and you just end up with 1 billion cards in your hand throughout the turn. There would be a lot of times this weekend where I'd have situations where I would full combo, have a trap set, and still have 6 cards in hand, just because that's how much this deck searches and draws throughout the turn. It's absolutely insane. Next up, we have our 2 copies of Will and our 1 Foolish Burial, kind of your extenders slash cards that let you play through hand traps, especially Will. Will's great at being able to play through Nibiru and Foolish. Just, again, like I said with the salad package, just being able to get all your names in rotation, all your names into the grave, just to have them ready whenever you need them is really, really good. And to round out our spells, we are playing 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Again, pretty standard for salad builds, and like I said, so much drawing, so much searching in this deck. All you do is draw and search in this deck. You will banish the Gazelle and you will banish the Sanctuary here and there, but I promise you it doesn't end up mattering. This deck can function perfectly without either of those, especially if you're drawing 2 cards in the process. One of the other monsters we end up playing is the 1 copy of Prohibit Snake. Pretty standard, I'd say, in builds this format. Winda is a very, very good card, and it's a very difficult card for this deck to be able to out. So having a card like this that can out this, as well as Dragoon. Dragoon is another big one that this card helps out. It's a really, really good card to have. Neither of those cards, I ended up not having to deal with a Winda or a Dragoon throughout this weekend. But again, just in case those matchups do come up, this card is very, very useful. Next, we have our hand trap lineup. We're actually maining 9 hand traps in this build, remaining 3 Ash, 3 Bell, and 3 Imperm. 9 hand traps that I just thought were probably good enough to get me through the majority of decks that I'd be facing this weekend. Ash is just really, really good at hitting the majority of the decks in the game at this point. Imperm is really, really good, especially like I said, because we're going with a heavier trap lineup. Being able to use this going second as a hand trap and also going first just to set something is really, really good. Bell is probably my least favorite of the 3. Honestly, going forward, I think I might actually switch this out for something like a Droll and Lockbird. I do think Bell underperformed pretty heavily this weekend. It didn't come up that much, and the times that it did come up, it didn't actually stop the opponent. So I do think going forward, I think Bell is probably the one that I would switch the most. Next, we have our trap lineup. We have the 2 copies of Roar and the 1 Rage. I was originally on 2 Roar and 2 Rage, but I wanted to put the Prohibit Snake in the main deck, and I had to find a spot, so I ended up cutting the 2nd Rage. Pretty standard in builds, being able to see these cards regularly, dump them off of your Gazelle, and recur them with something like Sunlight Wolf. These are both insane cards and really, really useful in the deck. And then we're going to round out our 40 card main deck with 3 copies of Solemn Strike. In addition to Buffalo, probably the other co-MVP of the deck this event. I think this card is absolutely crazy. This card, you know, it's just a blowout against the majority of decks going first. Being able to set this card and just stop a summon, going against Drytron, stopping their Mu Beta summon, going against Tri-Brigade, stopping their Appaloosa summon. This card is just really good in that case. And like I said, because this build is a lot slower than typical Salad builds, this card is not always dead going second. Like I said, because we're going for a little bit more of a grindier game, a lot of these decks, when they're trying to kill you on, you know, if they're going first, they build a board and they're trying to kill you on their turn 3 with an OTK. A lot of times they'll have to consolidate. Access Code is a very good card, but they have to link summon the Access Code. So being able to set a strike and then flip it on the Access Code summon when they try to kill you, blows them out even harder, and then you can just come back with an Access Code OTK of your own next turn. Really good card. I think a lot more builds should be playing this. And moving on to the extra deck, there's nothing really too exciting in here. It's pretty standard, I'd say. You have the 3 copies of Balinks and the 3 copies of Sunlight Wolf, very standard. Obviously, you need to see these cards for your combos. Next up, we have 2 Heat Leo. This is probably the one card in the extra deck that I did not use a single time. This card never came up. It might be due to my matchups. I never actually played any back row heavy decks. I'll go over that in the matchups once I finish the profile. But this card never came up a single time, and honestly, I don't really think it's that good. I think a lot of the times Transcode is a lot better of a Link 3 to go into in this deck, and I did miss a couple cards in the extra deck that I think would replace, mainly Link Spider. Link Spider is a really good card because Nibiru is a very tough card for this deck to play through, so being able to link off the Nibiru token that your opponent gives you for another Cyber's body. If you're able to get another Salamangreat on field and go into a Splash Mage, you can at least make some sort of plays from there and play through the Nibiru. In addition, Almirage is another one that I've been thinking about playing. But yeah, I think going forward, I think Helio is probably the one extra deck card that I would end up cutting. Next, we have our 1 copy of Splash Mage. Like I said, this card is really good for the playing through Nibiru, or for playing through Nibiru. Just being able to at least get your transcode on field. Sometimes, you know, if you want to extend, you can get your Splash Mage out, revive something, make a transcode, and then revive your Sunlight Wolf. Now you have an untargetable Sunlight Wolf that makes your traps live. So that's really good to have. Next, we have our OTK package. We have our 1 Update Jammer, our 1 Transcode Talker, and our 1 Access Code Talker. Shout out to my boy Brendan for letting me borrow his access code. I didn't actually own one for this event, and he was nice enough to let me borrow one for the event, so shout out to him. This is your main win condition of the deck here. This is how you OTK in 90% of your games, just going from Jammer into Transcode reviving the Jammer into your access code, pop the whole board, have a 5300 body that can attack twice. It's just absolutely insane. Our last link in the deck is 1 copy of Lingaribo. This card is really good in this current format, especially with how prevalent Tri-Brigade is and how good of a card that Revolt is. Just having a card that you can easily make with any one of your salads that can negate your opponent's Revolt is just really good. And I thought this card was really good. Next, we have our 1 Dweller. Dweller is probably the best rank 4 for this deck. In this current format. This card hits like 90% of the format. It completely shuts down Sky Striker not being able to access Ray. It shuts down Drytron Names in the Grave. It shuts down a lot of the other decks in this format, and I do think that this card is really good. And to round out the extra deck, we of course have the MVP of the extra deck, the 1 copy of Mirage Stalio, freshly off the ban list. This card is obviously ridiculous. I don't have to say much more about how good this card is. And moving on to our side deck, I think that the side deck that I made for this event was damn near perfect. Every single one of the cards in this side deck ended up coming in at some point throughout the weekend, and they all made a difference. I think there might be 1 change that I might make to this side deck, but other than that, I do think it was really perfect. So we're going to start off with 3 copies of Artifact Lancia. Lancia is just an absolutely insane card in this current format. Obviously, Tri-Brigade probably being the most popular deck, seeing the most representation of the entire event as far as I know. This card just completely shuts down that deck. This card shuts down the Invoke decks, not being able to banish for their invocation. It just shuts down a lot of the decks in this current format. It's a really good card. Next, we have the 3-cycle reader to shut down Drytron. This card came up a couple times in my my lone Drytron matchup this weekend, and both times it completely just stopped its turn. So this card is obviously really good for that matchup. You might want to test out trying DD Crow over this, just because how DD Crow can hit a lot more of the matchups in the current meta, not just Drytron. But Drytron is a very popular deck and a very good deck in this current format, and having a card like this that just completely shuts down that deck is really valuable. Next up, we have 3 copies of Darla the Mystery Dusk Kaiju. Kaijus are really good this format. Believe me, Kaijus are so good. Again, like I said, Sky Striker is very prevalent this weekend. This card is an absolute blowout against that deck. And a lot of these other combo decks, Drytron, Tri-Brigade, Adignister was another very popular one this weekend. This card is a blowout against all of them because they often end on a card like a Herald for your Drytron matchups and Appaloosa for your Tri-Brigade matchups. The Arrival Cyber's big Link 6 that the Adignister ends on, slap a Kaiju over and now their entire board is broken. Or in the case of, the other decks, their entire board isn't broken, but it's significantly weaker. Just by giving them a Kaiju. This card is really good, and it came up a lot this weekend. Next, we have the 1 copy of Pankratops for going second. This is probably the card that came up the least this weekend, but it did help me in a key situation against Dragon Link, going second, being able to break a board. This card is just really good overall. Next, we have our back row hate. We have 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone and the 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. This is probably the one change that I will be making going forward with this side deck. I did think that having 3 Twin Twister over the 3 Cyclone would have been a lot better this weekend, just to be able to hit some more back row. Again, Sky Striker setting multiple cards, sometimes Tri-Brigade setting multiple cards with their Imperial Orders and stuff like that. I think hitting 2 back row instead of just the 1 would have been a lot better for this weekend, especially also with the Twin Twister having to discarding in this deck is really good. Being able to get some of your normal summons out of the hand, something like a Jack Jaguar or a Falco or a Foxy, into the grave and still being able to opt 2 is really good. So I do think that was the one change that I would make, but still these 4 cards came up a lot this weekend, and they were really good in a lot of instances. Okay, and we're going to round out the side deck with the lone copy of Imperial Order. Again, just another absolute blowout card against a lot of the decks in the format. Completely shuts down Sky Striker, shuts down Tri-Brigade if they're trying to go for their tanky, completely shuts down Drytron, cutting off their ritual spells. This card is just it's just an absolute blowout card against a lot of these decks, and it was really good this weekend. And yeah, that's it for the deck profile. So going over my matchups really quick, I'm not going to go too in depth. I ended up playing 4 Tri-Brigades this weekend, which is pretty crazy. I played 2 Pure Tri-Brigades, 1 Lyra Lust Tri-Brigade, and 1 Zodiac Tri-Brigade this weekend. I ended up losing both games to the Pure Tri-Brigades. The first game, I think I bricked both games. It was like the first round of the day. I bricked game 1, and I think game 2 I misplayed pretty heavily, which lost me that. So I lost that matchup 2-0, and the second one was in round 3, and it was probably the worst match that I played since I got back into the game. I just played so horribly. I had so many opportunities to win that match, and I just basically threw them all away. So I lost that. And the other 2, the Lyra Lusk Tri-Brigade and the Zodiac Tri-Brigade, I ended up winning both of them. I believe 2-0 both of them. So that was pretty cool. I played the 1 Dragon Link. I ended up beating the Dragon Link player in round 4. I beat him game 3. After game 1, I hard bricked and couldn't do anything. And then game 2, I flipped the Imperial Order on him and basically ended his turn because he had like 4 spells in hand. And then in game 3, I broke his board and Axis Kodo DK'd him. And then my last matchup of the day, I think in round 6, I actually got a free win because my opponent ended up no-showing to the table, so I got a free win there. And then my last match of the day was round 7 against Drytron, and this match kind of broke my heart because I thought this match was really winnable. We ended up going to game 3. We had about 10 minutes left in time going into game 3, and he was going first. I had sided in an unbelievable amount of hate for his deck. I had about 12 hand traps. I had my bells, my ashes, my imperms, my cycle readers all in on top of my 3 kaiju. So I had 15 ways to stop his deck from going off. And my starting hand for that turn, when I flipped it over, it was triple Buffalo and double Desires. And I sat there with a blank look on my face, just wondering how the hell am I going to do this. At that point, it was, you know, he had full combo. He went completely off. He got his full combo with his Herald, his IP, his Mu Beta. So at this point, I'm thinking, all right, I need exactly a kaiju, and I might be able to do something. And then I ripped the card off the top, and it was Sanctuary for turn, and I just scooped up there, and that was the end of the event for me, unfortunately. So didn't end up the way that I wanted it to, but regardless, like I said, I still had a ton of fun. I did think that this event was a lot of fun to play, and I thought it was, for the most part, it was run very, very well. And I'm really, really excited for the next one. So yeah, if you guys like this video, if you like the profile and you like this kind of content, please do leave a like down below. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another upload. I am planning to bring some more videos to you guys in the future, the very near future. I have a lot of stuff planned for you guys, so if you don't want to miss any of those, make sure to hit that sub button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.